When a character in a film is scripted to die, the filmmakers are confronted with the important question of what does death look like? And if you're like most films, it looks like a death scene. The stereotypical version has you surrounded by your loved ones, choking out some on-theme last words, and reaching to those heavens you will soon enter. Probably best articulated and mocked in Tropic Thunder. And many of them are spectacular. Some are silly, some are shocking, and some will wreck you. But all of the best of them have a unique perspective on what it looks and feels like to be there with death. But there are a few films out there that take a slightly different approach. Their answer to the question, how do you film death, isn't with a death scene, it's you don't. And not out of a sense of propriety or politeness or denial where the film is refusing to engage with the death, but purposefully, as if the not showing it is the point. One of the films that best gives us that perspective is Stand By Me. And because we're talking about death scenes here, I gotta warn you that we are going to completely spoil this movie and the 3 other films we mention later, so check the description below for what they are and their timestamps if you want to skip ahead. In Stand By Me, 4 boys hear a rumor about a dead body somewhere in the woods near their town, and they go on a long, often perilous coming-of-age adventure to find it, and it all seems like great fun until they actually do find it, and it's a human's dead body. But after they found it and had a very sobering first encounter with mortality, they report it to the police, part ways, and say goodbye to a summer that's grown long in the tooth. And then we get this scene here.
I'll see you. Not if I see you first.
Chris did get out. He enrolled in the college courses with me, and although it was hard, he gutted it out like he always did. He went on to college and eventually became a lawyer. Last week, he entered a fast food restaurant. Just ahead of him, 2 men got into an argument. One of them pulled a knife. Chris, who had always made the best piece, tried to break it up. He was stabbed in the throat. He died almost instantly.
With something as simple as just voiceover and a dissolve, this scene manages to somehow create a deep, aching sense of loss. And for me, feeling like that is usually a pretty good indicator that there's something subtle happening beneath the surface. And if you look closer, what you'll find is a really clever, really heartbreaking bait and switch, with all the pieces of the story and its formal elements lining up to perform it. Take the story level first. The movie's just spent the better part of an hour and a half telling us the tale of 4 boys on a childhood adventure. We have every reason to expect that the ending will involve a last days of summer kind of goodbye, and we know that comes with a very particular kind of mid-grade sadness because many of us are probably familiar with it. Until here, over the course of just 12 seconds, that ending we're expecting gives way to a very different one. It's not a goodbye to summer, it's goodbye to Chris. And then it's really goodbye to Chris. The ground shifts beneath us, we struggle to catch up, and by the time we do, it's over. We were being told a different story all along, we just didn't realize it until it was too late. And much of the film's technical elements support this. Take the dissolve. It happens when we're already watching a character exit. We're prepared to watch him leave the screen, but not like that. It disappears him from view before he has the chance to exit at his own pace, just like the story does, just like Chris does. He doesn't walk out of frame, he's erased from it. All of a sudden, it's twice as fast and twice as permanent. And then there's the narration. Richard Dreyfuss starts out telling us the ending of this story exactly how we would expect him to, and even while his tone doesn't change, suddenly his sentences start leaping over 10 years just as fast as they were previously leaping over 10 minutes. It doesn't feel like the story is getting told 1,000 times faster, but it is. It accelerates beneath us with no warning or shift until it's too late. And then his voiceover disappears before he has a chance to finish it, giving way to blinking text on a screen. Which brings us to the editing. Just as suddenly as everything else, we are yanked from the past, from childhood and memory, and thrust into the inescapable now. The editing launches us forward decades in time. 30 years vanish beneath us in the span of a cut, and we didn't even know what was in front of us until it was practically already behind us. And I think that's what death feels like to Rob Reiner in Stand By Me, a sudden alienation and distance from your memories. News of a passing you weren't there to witness delivered unceremoniously and out of the blue, and the abrupt realization that you didn't even know what kind of goodbye you were saying when you were saying it. Another film that captures a similar feeling in how it treats death is Moonlight. Moonlight's first movement ends rather abruptly here, at Juan and Teresa's table in the wake of young Chiron's questions about his own sexuality with a cut to black. When we return, Chiron is in high school. Years have passed beneath us, much like they did in Stand By Me. Chiron has a tense encounter with Terrell, a brief conversation with Kevin. He's told he can't stay at home by his mother and he has to find somewhere else to be. And then we find him right back at the table with Teresa, right where he was before we jumped forward in time.
All right. Water for me and a little gin for you. Boy, please. I know wine used to give you that gin, but we ain't doing that up in here, shout it.
After dinner, Teresa sets Chiron up with somewhere to sleep.
Give me that. That ain't how you make up no bed. Hey, you think you slick, too. You gonna do it all wrong so Teresa can come over here and do it right. I know what you're doing. Oof. You and wine. Y'all two, thick as thieves. Give me that.
The next morning, Chiron's mother harasses him about where he stayed, and she makes an offhand remark about the last time she saw Teresa.
Anyway, baby, how Teresa doing, huh? Now, I ain't seen her since the funeral. Listen, Mama locked herself out the door, yeah? Can you come let her in?
And then, that afternoon, Terrell harasses him on his way home, and we finally get this a little bit more explicitly.
Oh, no, he going to Teresa's house.
Teresa? That's one lady, ain't it?
Oh, yeah, she fine as hell. Juan been dead a minute, though.
By the time the movie finally outright tells us that Juan has died, deep down, we already know. But the clues come slowly, like a faucet drip. In fact, the first clue isn't anything that's happened, it's what hasn't. The movie started with Juan. We meet him before we even meet Chiron. And here we are 3 scenes into the second act, and nothing. By skipping over the death itself, Barry Jenkins chooses to show it in relief. And this relief works as well as it does because of how effectively and powerfully we've connected with the character of Juan. He's a caring, kind father figure in a world of pain and tumult and chaos for Chiron. And every audience member with a pulse is looking forward to seeing him again. So when we increasingly don't, we start to feel that. And the dinner scene in particular is designed to encourage that feeling. Not only is the set design a stark and purposeful contrast to our last scene in this room, but look at how it's shot. We cut in on a lonely frame. It's just Chiron and 2 empty chairs. Teresa walks into the shot beside hers, and then nobody else does. The next shot has more empty chairs, no extra place settings, only 2 glasses. And then we talk about Juan in the past tense. She calls it my house, not our house. It's a bunch of subtle cues that clash with our expectations and hopes that Juan will soon walk into the room with a full plate, and with it bring his sense of joy. Juan's death has left a hole, and the only evidence of it are the scenes that he's not in, and the strange way that people tiptoe around the edge. Both Stand By Me and Moonlight create expectations in us from which they purposefully then deviate for dramatic effect. But where Stand By Me pulls a bait and switch with the ending we're expecting, Moonlight's sleight of hand is about the film we're expecting. This happens only about a third of the runtime in, and we realize the movie's not going to be about Chiron and Juan like we hoped. It's going to be about Chiron and loss. To Moonlight, death isn't an event. It's an absence you make an uneasy peace with. And a hole isn't something you see. It's an emptiness where there used to be something important.
I mean, yeah, our line of work, it's always out there. You probably don't even hear it when it happens, right?
Shifting from the passenger seat to the driver's seat, from the pews to the coffin itself, The Sopranos concluded in 2007 with one of the most contentious series finales in recent memory, where it attempted to locate the viewer inside the experience of what it's like to have one's life end. Season 6 sees Tony confront a near-death experience and begin a dangerous feud with New York, but he survives the shooting and puts an end to the feud, and many character arcs seem to be heading towards a conclusion. And in the show's finale, after his family finally leaves hiding, they meet for dinner, and we get this. once Carmela and AJ have arrived, it continues like this.
Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street light, don't stop.
Now, there's been a lot of debate over what this sudden cut to black means, but I don't think there's any ambiguity. I think there's only one sensible conclusion we can reach. Tony is dead. And we know this because every single part of the filmmaking in this scene builds us up to expect one thing before giving us absolutely nothing at all. Throughout the scene, we're taught a couple patterns. The simplest one is the chorus of the song. Even if you're one of the 3 people in America that doesn't already know it, you've heard it a couple times by the end of the scene and learned that there are 3 main words. Don't stop believing. 1, 2, 3. But we've also learned about the door and been taught about a series of beats that go along with it. First we hear the bell ring, then we see Tony look up, and then we see who walks through the door. 3 beats, 1, 2, 3. As we head towards the end of the scene, the music reaches for a peak and the editing starts to get faster, and yet the story itself simmers along with basically no drama. The most exciting thing happening is Meadow trying to parallel park her car. The mismatch in intensities between the story itself and the way it's being told creates a sense of uneasiness and tension. And in the show's final moments, both of the patterns it's taught us start but do not finish. We neither hear the conclusion to the titular line in the chorus, nor do we see the final shot in the door sequence. The bell rings, Tony looks up, don't stop, we expect it to continue. We were led to expect it to continue in an entirely predictable way. 1, 2. It's not just about how things stopped. It's about how they stopped when we had every reason to believe they would continue. And that's death in The Sopranos. We live every moment of our life expecting it to proceed on to the next one. And then death comes. A sudden, unexpected, unannounced, and unextraordinary nothingness.
We're all hurtling towards death. Yet here we are for the moment, alive. Each of us knowing we're going to die. Each of us secretly believing we won't.
Synecdoche, New York ends in a similar way. Caden Cotard has spent much of his life creating a stage play that perfectly replicates that life down to the very last detail. And in order to do that, he recreates an entire city within a warehouse, including a smaller version of that warehouse, inside of which is another smaller city, which obviously has its own warehouse, and yeah, it gets complicated. But he never cracks it. And in his old age, he grows tired of directing a self-recursive play that only seems to get more complex and never starts to make any kind of simple sense. So he trades in his director role for a bit part as a janitor, and he's given an earpiece through which the new director can give him direction. And like this, he reaches the very end of his life, where he wanders through the wreckage of his artistic vision, receiving his instructions.
What was once before you, an exciting, mysterious future, is now behind you. Lived, understood, disappointing. You realize you are not special. You have struggled into existence and are now slipping silently out of it. This is everyone's experience, every single one. The specifics hardly matter. Everyone is everyone.
Eventually, at the end of his world, he finds a sympathetic audience, and as instructed, sits to take a rest for a while. Then we get this.
Can I lay my head on your shoulder?
Yes.
I love you.
I love you too.
I don't want to do this play now. I have an idea. I think if everybody...
Die?
While this final moment is similar in its unfinishedness to Tony's end in The Sopranos, it has none of the ambiguity. It's just spelled out for us. In telegraphing and announcing the death, Synecdoche declares that its incompleteness is more important than its surprise. It's not trying to hide that the death is coming. In fact, it very much wants us to know we're heading quickly towards the finish line. The voiceover says he's silently slipping out of existence. The soundtrack is all kinds of last scene soaring strings, and then begins the fade to white. And I think for most audience members, it should be pretty clear that there will be no coming back. And in announcing itself, the ending asks us to listen extra close to the words he's going to say. We know this is the final scene. This is the film's last chance to give itself meaning. This is where we get the satisfying conclusion. And Caden seems to want to do exactly that. He finally knows how to do his life's work. He's had a revelation. He's wrapping his life and the movie up in a bow for us. But it grows harder and harder to see as the contrast slips away, and harder to hear as the music swells. And as he finally grasps for the answer, something he's tried and failed at multiple times over the course of his life, the film, and his life, and before he can. There is no grand climax, no ultimate moment of understanding, even as we were led to expect there would be. Nothing special happens, his life just slips away. And that's death to Synecdoche, New York. An anti-climax. An inescapable event for which you cannot provide meaning because you're no longer there to do so. Something out of your control that leaves you with loose ends and no answers. And unlike The Sopranos, it's not the song's chorus that goes unfinished. It's your line it interrupts. You don't get to make sense of it all. At the end of your life, all you do is die, and you don't even get to be there for it. Each of these scenes tells a story about death, not just without showing it, but by explicitly and noticeably turning away from it, defining death as a lack of experience rather than the presence of one. But because you can't point your camera at absence and you can't film something not there, these films use our expectations against us so that we can experience this absence in their relief. In Stand By Me, we expect a normal goodbye, but get a permanent one, leaving us feeling like our past has slipped out from under us. In Moonlight, we expect a presence and find an empty chair, leaving us longing and feeling bereaved. In The Sopranos, we expect a conclusion to a pattern and are met with nothing at all, leaving us feeling shocked and dissatisfied by design. And in Synecdoche, New York, we expect things to conclude with a sense of meaning, only for it to be interrupted, leaving us feeling unfinished and incomplete. To these films, death isn't the thing that happens at the very end of your life. It's the forever without you after it. So what do you think? Have any other thoughts about these movies? Any other films that show death by not showing it? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more brilliant moments.